You can't kill email. It's the cockroach of the internet, and I mean that as a compliment.
Welcome back to the Teach Traffic podcast with myself, Ilana Wexler. This is a show where we reveal the best tips, tricks, and tactics to increasing your website traffic and then converting that traffic into leads and sales. We also discuss what's working right now in the ever-changing world of web marketing so you can apply it to your business. Welcome to today's episode of Talking Web Marketing. I am so excited to have today's guest, who is Sue Rice. For those of you who don't know, Sue is an amazing email marketer, and she has been very generous with her time today and has come on today's show to share some really valuable tips about email marketing. Welcome to today's show, Sue.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you. We've been talking for quite a while offline, so I kind of wish we had pressed record a little bit before, but we have a jam-packed episode today. So, Sue, what are we going to be talking about today?
Well, I have been doing internet marketing since, probably about 15 years at this point. And I've worked in a lot of different areas. I'm a copywriter by trade, but as we know, we all have to wear lots of different hats. And what I've realized over time is that really the most important tool in any internet marketer's toolkit is email marketing. It might not be the sexiest, but it's definitely the best in terms of getting results for you. So hopefully we can talk about why that is today.
That sounds good. So before we hit record, we were talking about, I guess, the classic mistakes that people make when it comes to email marketing. So maybe we can sort of touch on the mistakes that, you see people make, and then obviously what you feel are the better ways to go about email marketing, because as you say, it has been around for a really, really long time. And there's a lot of talk in the market about, is email marketing dead, and all these sort of quite scandalous comments. So I think, anyway, why don't you start with one of the first ways that you see email marketing?
Yeah, I mean, the first one is what you just said. I mean, the first mistake people make is assuming it doesn't work anymore. And in certain circles, it's sort of like the cool thing to say, email, that's just like so passé. But what I would like to suggest is that email is not dead, but how you view it might be and how you use it might be. Because when you look at the stats when it comes to email, it absolutely is not dead. I mean, if you look at it in terms of, for example, the Direct Marketing Association has looked at the ROI that you can get in email marketing. For every dollar you spend, you can get a return of $38. Wow. There is absolutely no other tool out there that's going to give you that. None. The email is where it's all happening. So that means, let's imagine what that means. If you invest $1,000, that means you're going to get $38,000 back. That's a number you simply cannot ignore. And some outfits say that it's even higher. It could be as high as $44, $70 for every dollar you spend. I saw a recent post from Justin Brooke, who's a world leader in traffic.
Yes.
And he said, email marketing is my number one source of revenue. Based on my own company's data, easiest way to double or triple our business is to double or triple our email list size. And he thinks like 80% of his revenues in any given 2-month period comes from email. So it's, is it old? Absolutely. Is it not very sexy? Probably. But does it work? The answer, it's definitely in the numbers. I mean, there was a study, one last statistic, I won't bore you with too many, but when McKinsey did a study, and they believe that email is 40 times more effective than either a Facebook or a Twitter in acquiring new customers. So you can't ignore those numbers. But I do think that a lot of people actually execute their email marketing in a non-optimal way, shall I say?
Put it politely.
To try to be polite about it, yeah. So, I mean, I think that comes to the second mistake, right? So the second mistake, I mean, none of us have to go very hard. You just have to look at your inbox right now and you'll see what I'm talking about.
For inspiration of mistakes.
For inspiration about what not to do is selling too hard. It's just insane. People, just think about it as a parallel of a relationship, right? Imagine that you met someone at a conference or at someone's dinner party And the first thing that's out of their mouth is, would you like to buy a house? Or would you like to buy this? Or we would never do that with regular relationships, but everyone does it through their email marketing. They blast off. They don't talk about the person's problems. They don't talk about the person at all. They're just talking about their stuff and wanting to hawk their stuff. And it's a huge problem. And it's one of the reasons why the email has a bad reputation, because it's like, who wants that stuff on their mobile phones or in their inbox? No one wants that. So there's way, way too much. People are selling. They're not trying to develop a relationship. And the whole point of email marketing, I like to draw the parallel of, dating, right? So you get people leads in through Facebook. That's like the flirting stage, right? You're flirting with them. You're offering them a lovely lead magnet. But then the rubber meets the road when you get them on your list and you start to nurture that relationship. You start to date with them. You tell them a little bit about yourself. You ask them about them. You go on dates with them. You offer them, in virtually speaking, a cup of coffee or a meal or whatever. And then eventually you ask them to marry them. But you don't do that. You do that way down the line. You have to nurture the relationship first. And most people are trying to, get the marriage on the first email.
On the first
they want
date.
to sell. On the first date, right? And it feels that way, right? It feels pressured. And it's why a lot of people think that marketing is sort of swarmy and all of that, because if people are in too much of a rush, you need to warm people up. You need to give them a reason to want to have them in your universe. So, there is a stat, I don't have it in front of me, but there's a stat that people only open up like 10 different emails. So, you have to be in that trust. What people don't understand is one of the most rare currencies out there right now is trust. It's our biggest asset. And you have to build that trust. And you don't build the trust by asking people to buy on the, right outside of the gate. And that's what most people do.
So I think some people might be wondering, I guess it's probably an impossible question to answer, but, how long do you reckon it takes to build that trust? I mean, is it a function of how long the emails are or over time? What would you say?
Well, I think it depends. I mean, again, just to bring back the relationship analogy, if you think about it, if you're with someone who's super desperate and really needs a solution and really wants to get married right away, you probably ask them the second email, right?
Yeah.
But most people, it's sort of like a marriage proposal. If they're really desperate, they're probably going to say yes right away. But
might not be a great marriage, though.
It might not be a great marriage, right? But most people need a little bit more sort of foreplay, so we say. Yeah. So, I think that it's a difficult question to answer, but I do know one of the sort of express trains to getting at that trust and getting at that relationship and getting at a point where people are interested in what your product is and what you have to offer. And I know everyone talks about storytelling, and I feel like it's somewhat the whole concept of storytelling sometimes can be a bit misused. But what I do, and it seems to work really, really well, is that with each email, I tell a little story. And it's not a long story. It can be literally one sentence. It could be a quote, it could be a legend, it could be a fable, it could be about something I read on Facebook, it could be something that happened to me, but it's something that engages the person and makes them feel warmer towards me, makes me more human, and makes the conversation more human. And then I tell stories, but like I said, I'm not saying you have to be a novelist. These are really simple 1 to 2, 3 sentence stories. And then what I do is, the second piece of the formula is I kind of tell a moral of the story. So, which brings the moral of the story is sort of the bridge between the story itself, which makes it more humane, and what I'm ultimately going to do, which is a call to action, which is to ask them, invite them to do something, to watch a webinar, to buy a product, whatever that call to action might be. So the moral of the story is sort of the heart of the email, and it allows people to understand why that story is important to them. Kind of translates the story, if you will. And then I complete this sort of 3-step process by inviting them like I said, to do something. Sometimes it's not for them to buy, but sometimes it's, to go see something, to look at a video, to watch a webinar, whatever it is. And while it's super, super simple, I learned this, by the way, I should say, I learned this formula from a guy named Matt Fury, who is he's a complete genius. He doesn't do email marketing anymore, but I learned it, and it is so simple and so powerful. That one formula, if you start implementing it, and it's great for those people, because one of the mistakes people make, aside from selling too hard, is not doing anything at all. A lot of people get leads and then they never send one single email. And I think a lot of people can relate to that.
They're too scared to send emails.
They're too scared to say, ooh, out there in email land, they might bite me.
Yes.
And so if you think of using this little story formula that I just shared is a great way to it makes it it's like writing a little mini note to someone oh, today I was doing this and this is what it means for us. And what do you think? Let's go do this, right? So it's a very simple, straightforward way that kind of makes it easier for the person who's being communicated to, but it also makes it easier for the person who's sending the email because it feels more natural.
Mm.
Speaking of that, that's the other mistake that people make. Is the way they write is way too stiff, way too formal. Write an email like you talk. I mean, if you don't feel like writing, literally get out a recording device and say your email and have someone transcribe it and send that. You should be using contractions. You should not be perfectly grammatical. Don't worry, because one of the biggest turnoffs in emails is something, we don't write emails to our friends like that. They're full of typos and they've got mistakes. You don't want it to look sloppy, but I think it needs to feel informal, comfortable, like you would be talking to a real person.
Well, I guess people put their guard down then, don't they?
Yeah, I think that's part of I have people who I get emails from. It surprises me. I didn't think I would be following them, but I'm riveted by the writing and what they're saying.
Wow.
So I keep following what they do, and I eventually end up buying. But they're a rare gem because, as you know, the inbox is full of the opposite.
Yes, sad but true. So going back to your formula with the email, you said there's a call to action at the bottom of the email. Would you say you have a call to action in every email?
You absolutely. So this is the thing. We talked about the error of trying to sell too hard. There's also the opposite end of the spectrum where you sell too little, right?
Yes.
One of that is just not sending the email at all. So you're obviously not going to sell anything if there's no email at all. But also people try to write, and I have worked with people like this who they are reticent they're afraid that it's going to be too pushy if they have. But, the reality is it is called email marketing for a reason. We're marketing. And the problem you have is if you don't have a call to action in each of your emails, and you sort of habituate your email list to not having call to actions, when you put them in there, they're going to be like, oh my gosh, why is she trying to sell to me now? Right. So what you do, there's a way of doing it that's just like anything. There's a way of doing it where it's simple and it's elegant and it feels seamless and it doesn't feel, heavy duty. But at the end of the day, you're not going to get that $38 on that dollar if you don't ask for the sale.
Sure. But I guess you're not selling every email, but you're there is some action that have to do.
That's right. I think that's the balance. And I think that, but for example, if you have a membership site and people haven't bought into it, you can invite them into that membership every single time if you want. I wouldn't ask people every single email that you send out to spend $5,000. I think people will probably, that probably won't work as well, of course, depending on who your target is. But
I guess it's all in the framing.
If it's a low level, it is in the framing, and that's what the story does. That's what the story and the lesson of the story or the moral of the story does. It frames the invitation, and you need to think of even if you're asking them to buy, it's still an invitation to see more, to get more, to be part of your universe. And I mean, it's just like you do in real life. You ask someone over for coffee and then you say, would you like to go, spend a day at wherever, at the beach? You sort of gradually you up the ante as you move forward in that relationship.
What about the people who might be sort of listening to this and feeling like, oh my God, where would I get such inspiration for such stories? Like they're almost like they'd run out of potential stories to use. Where do you get inspiration for?
I mean, stories to me, again, I am a writer, so I probably have a tiny bit of a bias on this, but to me, stories are absolutely everywhere. We don't even know it, but if you think about it, every single day we tell stories. We tell stories about what happens to our kids or what happened to our boyfriend or our husbands or our whatever. We talk about stories. When you look at the Facebook news feed, all it is stories. Stories about what's happening politically or a tragedy that happened or something amazing, a triumph, or there are stories absolutely everywhere. There are stories in books. There's stories in, that you can dip into stories that, sort of common culture stories that are from TV series or movies, books. It's really endless. I mean, I would suggest that you kind of somehow have like a little folder, whether it's a virtual one or a real one, which collects stories that have intrigued your interest. And the one thing that I didn't say is this is the one thing people make mistake. They think they need to tell a story that's related directly to their product. No, every story can be linked to what you're doing. No matter what the topic, I think it probably goes beyond this particular podcast, but the way you do that through that bridge, which is the lesson of the story. You can link any story with what you do. You just need to be a bit clever about it.
Creative.
So yeah, but the stories get people's guards down. They create a great relationship. Like I said, it's the express train to getting people to like you, and people who like you are people who buy from you.
All right. What's the next mistake people make?
The other mistake that people make, and this isn't just related to email, I think this is related to the internet marketing world in general, is that they see email as this sort of separate entity, completely separate, things like Facebook or Twitter or whatever. And I think everything is part of an ecosystem, right? Email is part of, to me, it's at the heart of an ecosystem, but it's still part of an ecosystem and it doesn't stand on its own. So just to let's give an example of sort of how email interfaces and integrates with Facebook. So there's ways now where you can actually create custom audiences that you can use in Facebook from people who have reacted certain ways with your email. So for people who haven't opened a link, or people who have opened a particular email, or people who've clicked on a link or haven't clicked on a link, and you can create custom audiences depending on their behavior in your email, and then take those lists and retarget your message or repeat a message on Facebook in their newsfeed.
Yeah.
Because we are, as individuals, we don't have an email life and a Facebook life and a Twitter life and a whatever Instagram life. We have a life and we see messages all day, every day. And I don't know about you, but I don't always remember where I've seen them. I've read things here. I've gone, whether it's been a search or whether it's been on a news feed or someone shared it to me. So you need to think about your messaging. Email is a messaging platform. Facebook is a messaging platform as well. So we need to have them working together so you have them complement each other. Another thing that people think about a lot is, or starting to talk about a lot, Messenger, things like Messenger, like Facebook Messenger. There's no reason you can't have some of your email autoresponder sequences being programmed into a messenger. So you actually show that those messages through a Facebook Messenger where the open rate is much, much higher than an inbox. But it's the same principle. It's just email marketing outside the inbox, if that makes sense.
Yeah, total sense.
It's not vying with it. It's working with it. One of the things that people think about when they think about email marketing is that it's all about autoresponder sequences, right? Which are sequences that you set up when people behave a certain way. And that is super, super important. That's the base of your email marketing. But I think the problem with only doing autoresponder sequences, at some point, the autoresponder sequence runs out, right? And so people will set up an autoresponder sequence. It could be 10 emails, it could be 5 emails, it could be 50 emails. But at some point, that autoresponder sequence ends, right? And then they don't send anything. So it'd be like, once again, dating someone, courting them, asking them out every night, and then all of a sudden silent for months. So you need to be sure that you're continuously nurturing with, one-off emails, broadcast emails, et cetera. Email marketing is not something that ends like a conversation. It should be something ongoing. So that's a mistake also people make.
Going back to what you were talking about, email being part of an ecosystem, and especially, how easy it is now to combine your Facebook ads with email. Look, I do this a lot with my clients. And the one reason that we find it works so well, first of all, it's like people think, well, why would I want to pay for it when I can do it for free on email? The answer is actually not a lot of extra budget. Like we often say $5 or $10 a day maximum, you will still reach your Facebook database or your email database via Facebook. But for the very reason that people can share it. Because people share ads, especially if you write an ad in such a way it doesn't feel like an ad. And people will easily share that Facebook ad with their own ecosystem, which they're unlikely to forward an email to all of their friends. It's so easy. That share button in that ad makes your message to get spread far and wider. So that's something that we see.
That's such a good point. I mean, we were laughing before we started recording this podcast about in 2013, Jay Baer, who's a big expert on internet marketing, he made a speech and he talked about how email marketing is Madonna, sort of like the old lady, but who's kind of people consider a bit boring, but she still dominates things. And Facebook is like Lady Gaga, right?
Yes.
And who's a little bit younger, a bit sexier and everything. But, my feeling is, which I love the analogy, great, but, there's a place for both of them. And to be honest, they can both share the same stage, right?
Absolutely.
And they should share the same stage and they should be singing the same song together because they're both powerhouses in their own right. As you rightly pointed out, the sum is much greater than the parts. So, why not bring them together? Yeah. Don't think of them as like silos, that they're completely independent of each other because they're not. And people don't consume them that way.
Yeah. And actually, Facebook did a study where they analyzed people who were combining their emails with their Facebook ads, and they found that customers were 22% more likely to purchase. Now, who knows if that number is entirely accurate, but there's no doubt that marketers or business owners would get more sales by doing so. There's just, I don't know how much more. I think that would obviously vary for different businesses, but it's undoubtedly more. For minimal extra cost.
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely agree with that. And it's such an easy thing to do. It's, you can have it sort of almost going automatic pilot, right?
Totally.
You set up the custom audiences, you have it organically growing, and it's such an obvious thing to do. And a lot of people just fail to do it. I mean, you have to be careful how you do it and how you create those retargeting ads, because even just a couple of days ago, I had someone like, I saw you were on this page and I saw you did this. And, it can feel stalkery-ish. I don't know if that's a word. If you're not careful, it needs to be done with elegance as well. I saw you were interested, but not make it feel too like you're stalking someone.
Yes. Couldn't agree more. All right. So what is the next mistake people make?
I think probably one of the biggest mistakes people make as email marketing has evolved is that they don't segment. Yeah, we've all received the email about buying the product that we've already bought. All of us have received that one, which is just, it's like annoying. Or, basically the whole concept of segmentation is that we send out emails in response to people's behavior. Right. And if someone's bought a product, don't invite them to buy it a second time. If someone has said to you, they're not, whether they've actually said it or they've said it through their actions, that they're not interested in a particular type of product, don't send them notices about that, And there's a lot of different ways that you can segment people out in terms of age, in terms of location, in terms of product, purchase behavior, in terms of what they've opened. There's a million different ways that you can do it. It's sort of an art in of itself, segmentation, but it's crucial to the efficacy of your email marketing, because the days of sending out a blanket newsletter to everyone, to be honest, you can do that with, you can send out, for example, a podcast, right? You can send that out to your entire list because that's an interesting piece of content for everyone. But when you start actually asking people to buy products or to be involved in, a virtual workshop or whatever it is, you want to be sure that you're sending out that invitation to the appropriate people. because you're going to, even if you're sending it out to a much smaller sub-segment of your list, you're going to have a much better ROI on that if you're sending it to the right people. It just makes sense, right?
And you're not going to upset people, and then they're going to pay more attention to your emails because it's relevant.
Exactly. But but I would say that is the biggest mistake people make. And it's silly because there are a lot of CRMs out there that can easily help you do that segmentation. They sort of do it for you if you just put in the right systems, the right tagging, or up front, that you can create those sub lists really, really easily. So in other words, don't think of your list as a whole list. Think of it as a bunch of sub lists together where people have shown you, but through their action, what they've clicked on, what they've opened, what they're interested in.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much, Sue. Have we reached the end of all these terrible mistakes that people make?
Yeah. Hopefully this is helpful to people, because I think email is, like I said, it's probably not the sexiest tool around, but it's certainly your most powerful tool that you can use.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I don't think it's going away anytime soon, contrary to a lot of the chatter in the marketplace that I certainly hear people calling it that it's over. I'm certainly not of that belief.
Yeah, there's a lot of different reasons why that is. I love that. There's this quote from I ran across this quote the other day from The Atlantic magazine where they said, "You can't kill email. It's the cockroach of the internet," and I mean that as a compliment.
That's fantastic.
This resilience is a good thing.
It's going to survive the nuclear blast.
It will probably survive the nuclear blast.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you so much for coming on today's show, Sue. It was a pleasure to have you on, and it's always a pleasure to talk to you. And, thank you so much for sharing your infinite wisdom with our listeners today.
Thank you for the opportunity.
And for those of you who would like to find out more about what you do and where they can find you, how's the best way that people can find you?
Yeah, well, you can check out my website, which is slice, SLICE.international. And if you have any specific sort of personal questions, feel free to email me at sue@slice.international.
And I highly recommend Sue's email marketing services. They are brilliant. All right. Thank you so much, Sue. Always a pleasure.
Okay. Thanks. Bye.
Bye. Thanks so much for listening to the Teach Traffic podcast. For more information on each of these episodes and handy PDFs that you can download, head on over to teachtraffic.com.